So I wonder if you can talk about that and how it is that you see becoming aware of shame and healing shame as so essential on this path of healing specifically from childhood trauma.
Well, yeah, I think that, first of all, going back a bit, trauma was one of the first diagnoses the therapist would share with their clients. Most of the time, we wouldn't go into medical or to technological descriptions or diagnostic descriptions. We might use that for insurance purposes, but it didn't have necessarily a heavy need in the therapy, but trauma did. Because unless someone understands they had trauma, they will feel they're either crazy or broken. And it's really important to help people understand that actually something occurred. It impacted you psychologically, but it also impacted you nervous system wise, biologically, somatically, and that it can take us a while to heal our emotional wounds, our psychological wounds, but it can take even longer to help the nervous system return from a chronic state of on guardness, defensive states. And what I have found in my own work is that there's a couple of distinct phases of therapy, and one of them is just helping people initially understand they had trauma and it has these impacts on you. But the other one, especially when people are no longer having as many symptoms as trauma, their life is not as fragmented, disruptive, or threatened with dysfunction at times. They're more functional. They're able to feel like they have a life, but they harbor this sense of not enoughness inside. The things that I saw lasting longer were the shame. The shame was almost universal in every person that I kind of worked with after trauma. That seemed to be the thing that kept them from moving on. And like you were saying, Tami, it was only recently that you noticed, oh, when I start paying attention to my anxiety, I can see that there's a little aroma of shame in there somehow, right? But so many of us have the anxiety, get shaming of ourselves for being anxious when there's no reason. And we don't even think of it or look at it as shame. We're just thinking of it as, I'm too anxious and that's wrong. But if we begin to see, no, you need to understand shame and use it as a way of framing and seeing what's there. Shame is a state, it's a distortion. So just like I wouldn't trust everything I think when I'm enraged, we shouldn't trust most of what we think when we're in shame. It's always going to be horribly against us. So that insight alone is helpful, but it's not curative. What's curative is then, like you said, if I'm in a state of shame and I can connect with a sense of care, either towards myself or being loved by, co-regulating with the world or the universe or God, right? My change, my state shifts. I go out of shame, and all of a sudden, I'm not in that little nightmare of me being a bad person. I'm not shrunk anymore. I'm kind of human again. The problem, in effect, dissolves when we connect with a sense of self-compassion or loving compassion towards us. Again, if we're deep in shame, we will not be able, we'll have a very hard time receiving love from other people. And that's also something to work with, is our own ability to give affection towards us or care, and our own ability to receive it from others. Again, most of the trauma survivors I work with are some of the most loving people you would ever imagine. They're kind and thoughtful and sweet, and they don't give the time of day to themselves in a lot of ways.
Can you give us a very practical suggestion for receiving shame when we do have enough space to say, oh, receiving love, receiving that love when we feel shame? Can you give us a practical suggestion for how we do this? There's enough space. I can see that's what's going on. I'm punishing myself. I'm hard on myself. I want
So,
to interrupt this.
so one of the ways that I would do it is, again, everything, it's helpful to be framed or seen through the eyes of care. So if you listen to your shame, if you actually listen to the voice, my experience of shame is a very young version of me screaming, don't do this. You shouldn't have done this. You're going to get killed. It is um, absolutely terrified. And at the end, when I start hearing that, I can start identifying with and having compassion for that tortured young part of myself that felt that he had to be perfect to be okay, to survive. And so what I'll do then is I'll usually put a hand on my heart, one or two hands, and I'll I'll simply say, you don't have to worry about that right now. It's okay. People make mistakes. This is okay. But that'll only have impact if those two things are done. First of all, I have to see shame as shame. And doing that, I also have to return to a little bit more of connection with me. It helps to place one or both hands on your heart. And then notice the way that I was even saying it, I was embodying that sentiment. So it's not like, it's okay, it's not your fault. That's not going to go anywhere, right? But if I can dip into a little bit of inner regulation to offer it, in effect, to another part of me that's in shame, what happens is my whole system settles. So the key here is, again, to do things from your body, from your heart, to be aligned with them. That has all the difference in the world. One of the things that is a very big part in trauma therapy is this self-regulated presence of the therapist, right? The self-regulated presence of the therapist allows the other person to begin to feel safe enough to inquire into their own dysregulation. So this is something I've learned by necessity over years, but it has a tremendous impact. The more regulated I am, the more we can communicate that regulation just by our presence or by our tone of voice. And that this is something that people can learn to do for themselves and for those that they love. Because so much of what goes on is we come home and our spouse or our child is in despair because of something happened at school. And we're pressured because we got to start dinner, or we got to do something else, and we have to take care of their need. And we could also take the moment to just be with their pain and ours. That they're needing something, we want to respond to them, and we're also needing something, we're feeling pressured. And then what's the kindest way to respond to both of them? Is a different tack than, I don't know what to do. You got to give me some time. And which of course we'll do at times, we're human. But the idea is moving into your body gives you an expanded way to respond to all of your life. And that's the way of healing from trauma, is reclaiming our body, reclaiming our life, and stop believing in and living from this inner sense that we're unworthy, that we're not enough, that we're shameworthy.